The Stammering Heart. Chapter 1. The morning I finally worked up the courage to end things, I looked at the devastatingly handsome face beside me on the pillow and felt my throat close up. Not from desire, from dread. "BB boss," I started. The word came out wrong. My tongue betrayed me, as it always did at the worst moments when the stakes were highest, when I needed my voice most desperately. I tried again. "We should get it." The dark, hungry look in his eyes vanished instantly. Grayson Hale's lips curved into that familiar smirk, the one that had made me feel 2 inches tall for the past 18 months. "Oh? Your tongue seems to have had some work done overnight," he stretched lazily, all 6 feet of arrogance and entitlement. "Now you want to marry me?" He actually yawned. "Fine. Since you keep begging for it, I suppose I'll do you the favor. Consider it charity work. We'll have the wedding at the end of this month." A pause. "Don't misunderstand, I'm not eager. It's just that my grandmother keeps nagging." Something snapped inside me. I finally managed to force out the rest of my sentence, each word a small victory torn from my reluctant throat. "We should get. We should break up." His face went blank with shock. "Good. Let me back up." Chapter 2. Grayson Hale drove himself to work one morning and got into an accident. He ended up in a coma, a vegetative state, the doctors said, no telling when or if he'd wake up. When Marcus Chen, his executive assistant, announced this devastating news to the company via video call, every employee kept their heads down. Not a single face showed genuine grief. And why would they? Grayson Hale was what you might call a world-class tyrant. Everyone in that conference room had been on the receiving end of his razor-sharp tongue at least once. He'd made grown men cry. He'd driven 3 assistants to quit in a single quarter. His idea of constructive feedback was public humiliation. Only Marcus, the ultimate loyalist currently wrapped in bandages from head to toe after his own minor accident in the same crash, remained devoted. "Someone needs to be stationed at the hospital," he announced through the screen. "We need real-time updates. Even if Mr. Hale is unconscious, he should hear about our dedication to the company." A pause. "Make sure it's someone articulate. Mr. Hale has no patience for fumbling." I felt a chill run down my spine. Sure enough, the moment the video call ended, every pair of eyes in the room swiveled toward me. Bradley, our team lead, grinned like a wolf who'd spotted a wounded rabbit. "Lucy, how's that stutter of yours? All better?" "Gee, good," I stammered. "It's good." "Doesn't sound good to me." He barely suppressed his laughter. "Don't worry, kid, this is a great opportunity. Practice in front of Mr. Hale. That'll fix you right up." "Yes," I stutter, especially when I'm nervous, especially in front of crowds, especially when I feel small and powerless, which in this office was always. In every team meeting, while everyone else spoke confidently, I'd be drenched in sweat, unable to form a complete sentence. For years, I'd hidden in the background, communicating through emails and messages whenever possible. I'd developed workarounds, detailed written reports, comprehensive documentation, anything to avoid speaking aloud. Then I'd been wrongfully blamed for a data error at my previous company. I knew I hadn't made the mistake. I had proof. But when I tried to defend myself in front of the leadership team, my voice had betrayed me completely. I didn't, the files were. "I can show you." They'd exchanged glances, pitying, embarrassed for me. No one had believed me, not because I was wrong, but because I couldn't make them hear me. I'd had to change jobs. Somehow, Grayson Hale himself had found out about my stutter. He'd summoned me to the executive floor for what he called a casual chat. "I heard we hired someone who can flip a walk with her mouth instead of her hands," he'd said, smirking from behind his massive desk. "Let's see what that looks like." He'd leaned back in his chair, watching me struggle to respond. "Oh, and wear a mask around the office from now on. We don't need to increase the cleaning staff's workload." He'd paused, letting that sink in. "Actually, don't bother with the mask right now. My office has carpet." His gaze had been cold, contemptuous. "Those big eyes of yours, are they just for decoration? Because they're certainly not helping you speak." After that, he'd seemed to take a special interest in tormenting me. He'd set up a desk for me in his own office, forcing me to report to him daily so he could pick apart everything I did. Every stammered word became ammunition. Every hesitation, evidence of incompetence. I'd endured more verbal abuse from him than anyone. I wanted nothing more than to stay as far away from him as possible. So when I heard I was being assigned to his hospital room, I waved my hands frantically. "And a no, I can't. Can't fail, that's the spirit. Don't. Don't underestimate your commitment to the company. We won't. By YU. You're right, we shouldn't waste any more time. Let's get her over there." My coworkers, people who normally couldn't lift a water cooler jug, somehow found the strength to physically carry me to the VVIP hospital suite. They waved cheerfully as they fled the scene. I sighed, rolled up my sleeves, and steeled myself. "Fine, if I'm going down swinging." "Lucy Fairwood, your mission is to survive this with your dignity intact." Chapter 3. I was about to push open the door to Grayson's room when something impossible happened. Words appeared before my eyes, floating text, like subtitles on a movie screen, or comments on a live stream. Kiss him, kiss him. The heroine knows he secretly funded her education. She's loved him from afar for so long. Now that her unreachable sun has fallen, our girl can finally shower him with affection. The hero has always had someone he secretly loved, but he was too emotionally constipated to act on it. Good thing our heroine is the kind of lover who won't be pushed away. He may be in a coma, but he can still sense the outside world. He'll fall for her through her confessions and touches. It's like Sleeping Beauty, but gender-swapped. So romantic. I stared at the floating text, bewildered. Was I hallucinating? Had the stress finally broken something in my brain? But no, the words were crisp, clear, hovering in my peripheral vision like an augmented reality display. Who were these people? And why did they seem to think some woman was about to kiss my unconscious boss? I peeked through the crack in the door. Sure enough, there was a woman in there, blonde hair, delicate features, dressed in nurse's scrubs. She was leaning toward Grayson's motionless form with pursed lips. Instinctively, I pulled out my phone and hit record. Boss getting kissed without consent while in a coma? This was either going viral or becoming evidence. But just as I started filming, a tickle crept up my nose from the antiseptic hospital smell. Achoo! The woman inside nearly jumped out of her skin. I felt bad for interrupting her, whatever that was. I lowered my head apologetically. Sorry, I'm so sore. If I hug you, you won't tell anyone about this. She was staring at me wide-eyed. Is that what you're trying to say? What? No, I have sting. Before I could finish, she walked over, placed her chin on top of my head, and wrapped her arms around my waist. A sweet scent enveloped me, vanilla and something floral, like those calcium chews I used to love as a kid. The heating in the hospital room was cranked up high. Between the warmth and the unexpected gentleness, my head went fuzzy. When I came back to myself, she was gone. Only a trace of warmth lingered on my sleeve. I looked at the oblivious man in the bed tubes running into his arms, monitors beeping steadily, and felt something strange stir in my chest. Not sympathy, not attraction. Opportunity. The floating text had mentioned something about a destined lover who won't be pushed away. Grayson Hale certainly was emotionally stunted, but that reasoning was ridiculous. By that logic, I broke as I was deserved a bank that wouldn't call the cops when I overdrew my account. Every struggling student deserved an Ivy League acceptance letter just for wanting it badly enough. Every person with a crush deserved that crush to love them back. That's not how the world works. If you don't know how to love, then learn. If you refuse to learn, if you choose cruelty over growth, then you don't deserve the patience and devotion of someone trying to heal you. And you definitely don't deserve someone as sweet as that vanilla-scented woman throwing herself at your unconscious body. The comments kept appearing. Their romance will blossom during his hospital stay. He'll let down his walls through her devotion. He'll awaken to her words of love just like the fairy tale. They were eating this up. It made me sick. Why should he get rewarded for being terrible? Why should some woman waste her life trying to fix a man who'd never bothered to fix himself? I thought about every cruel word he'd said to me, every time he'd made me feel worthless, every colleague who'd cried in the bathroom after one of his tirades. If that blonde woman was a lover who couldn't be pushed away, then I would be a pest who wouldn't leave. Not to win his heart, to protect hers. After careful consideration, I made a decision that would horrify my supervisors and probably get me fired. But some things were more important than job security. Chapter 4. The next day, when Violet Brooks, the blonde woman, came by during her nursing shift, I was playing a video recording of a recent company meeting. On screen, Grayson's cold face filled the frame as he eviscerated the presenting employee. Your presentation reminds me of a historical strategist. What was his name? No, nothing. Your thought process is like 1,970 seconds economics, outdated and irrelevant. No one's going to carry you to success. You'll have to drag yourself up the wall. The courage it took to present this garbage, I'll give you credit for that. It takes real bravery to waste everyone's time so thoroughly. He then surveyed the room. I feel like a general surrounded by enemy soldiers. Tell me, do your ears slap your face when you shake your heads? Do you sneak off to eat from the feed trough when no one's looking? I sensed eyes on my back and hastily stopped the video. Without turning around, I wiped a tear from my eye. Your boss? Violet asked, surprised. He seems harsh. It's not like that, I sniffed, playing my part. He's actually really nice when he's not insulting people. When is he not insulting people? I had no answer for that. Then why are you here taking care of him? Times are tough, I said, dabbing at my eyes with genuine emotion. Can't afford to lose my job. I felt her pat my shoulder sympathetically. Look at him, I thought. Look at who your precious hero really is. Still want him now? But I'd underestimated Violet's persistence. She returned an hour later with a basin of water, ready to give Grayson a sponge bath. I couldn't let that happen. Not the bath itself that was medically necessary, but the intimate, romantic context she was creating in her head. I accidentally tripped and knocked the basin, splashing warm water across my own clothes. Oh no, I'm so cold, I shivered dramatically, even though the water was warm and the room was heated. Violet had to take me to the nurse's station to change. By the time we returned, a male orderly had already finished the task professionally. I secretly celebrated. Then I noticed Grayson's hospital gown had slipped, revealing a shoulder and the edge of his chest. Even unconscious, even hooked up to machines, the man looked like he'd been carved by a sculptor with a grudge against ordinary-looking people. I lunged forward and yanked the gown back up, covering him completely. The man was dangerous even in a coma. That body could make anyone stupid. I immediately ordered an oversized compression shirt online and wrestled it onto him the next morning. Weather's getting cold, I muttered to no one. Better keep everything covered. The day after that, Violet brought homemade chicken soup. She blew on each spoonful lovingly, preparing to feed it to Grayson through his feeding tube, which made no sense medically, but the comments were going wild. This is so sweet. True love conquers all. He'll taste her devotion. She didn't succeed. I'd been hiding under the bed, waiting. I shot out and intercepted the spoon with my mouth. Oh, I said innocently, licking broth from my lips. I thought that was for me, I'm sorry. I couldn't get the word out. My face turned red, tears forming from the effort of trying to speak. Violet's expression softened. She sighed and beckoned me over. Somehow, I ended up cradled in her arms, finishing the entire pot of soup while she stroked my hair like I was a stray cat she'd adopted. The comments were confused. Wait, what's happening? This random employee is definitely doing this on purpose. The hero is lying there like a betrayed husband while these two cuddle. Wrong ship, wrong ship. As the soup ran out, I casually produced a bottle of something green. Spinach juice. Grayson's most hated vegetable. He'd once exploded at me for ordering a salad that included spinach, calling me nutritionally illiterate and clearly trying to poison the entire executive floor with your peasant vegetables. I looked at his unconscious form and smiled. The green liquid went down his feeding tube. I could have sworn his chest heaved. His eyelids fluttered, as if he could sense the betrayal even through his coma. I whistled innocently. He seems to love it, I said encouragingly to Violet. Look, he's responding. Maybe if he gets more vegetables, he'll wake up faster. Over the following days, I escalated my nutritional assault. Fermented bean curd juice, his second most hated food, durian smoothies, bitter melon extract, more spinach. Grayson had developed a visible twitch every time anyone approached with food. His eyelids would flutter desperately, as if trying to see who was tormenting him so he could add them to a list. Then one day, his leg, the one that wasn't injured, shot out and kicked Violet in the shin as she approached with a glass of celery juice. A miracle, the doctors exclaimed, rushing in at the commotion. Involuntary motor response, what have you been doing? They noticed the jar of fermented tofu in Violet's hand and recoiled at the smell. Nurse Brooks, this isn't appropriate patient nutrition. Violet was banned from bringing outside food into the room. The floating comments cursed me out, calling me every name in the book. But I'd done it. I'd disrupted the narrative. The romantic heroine had been sidelined. Now I could focus on my real mission. Chapter 5. With Violet's romantic fantasies on hold, I had time alone with my unconscious tormentor. Bradley had been right about one thing. Practicing in front of Grayson was effective. 2 reasons. First, of everyone I knew, I was most nervous around him. He was the big boss. I was terrified of losing my job. Every interaction with him sent my stutter into overdrive. If I could speak clearly in front of him, I could speak clearly anywhere. Second, he was currently unconscious. The tiger had fallen. Time to practice. No matter how badly I stammered, he could only lie there and take it. The floating comments were horrified. What is she going to do to him? She chased away the heroine and took her spot. She's trying to seduce the boss. Gold digger alert. They were wrong. If I could choose any path to success, it wouldn't be through seducing someone who'd treated me like garbage. My elementary school English teacher, Mrs. Patterson, used to say, Lucy, don't be afraid to read aloud. Read so loud that you're the scary one. Own your voice even if it stumbles. For years, whenever someone mocked my stutter, I'd remember those words. I couldn't always fight back verbally, but I could practice. I could get better. I could refuse to let my voice be stolen from me. The hospital room filled with my voice. FF 407 years ago, our F-fathers brought forth on this sea continent. It sounded like a car engine that wouldn't turn over, but I kept going. A new nation, conceived in a liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Nurses burst in, thinking an alarm had malfunctioned. An elderly patient from next door came shuffling over, curious about the noise. I waved them off and continued. Every day, I read to Grayson. Shakespeare, Lincoln, Maya Angelou, Martin Luther King Jr., all the speeches about courage and dignity and refusing to be silenced. The irony wasn't lost on me practicing speeches about human worth in front of a man who'd shown me none. But that was the point. He didn't get to define my value, only I could do that. And every word I forced out, every sentence I completed despite my stumbling tongue, was proof that my voice mattered, even if no one was really listening. Then I got creative. One evening, I started writing my own material, ridiculous, absurd stories designed to make me laugh rather than stress about perfection. I had my phone's text-to-speech read the first draft aloud to check the rhythm. Marcus gazed at the spreadsheet Grayson had just completed. After a full day of meetings, it was covered in aggressive red marks and capital letters. Marcus closed his eyes and whispered, "Sir, your comments are thorough." Okay, that wasn't funny enough. I tried again. Marcus gazed at the sock Grayson had just removed. After a full day of meetings, it was damp with executive stress. Marcus closed his eyes and inhaled deeply, savoring the aroma of late-stage capitalism. I burst out laughing. The absurdity helped. When I wasn't taking myself so seriously, the words came easier. I leaned close to Grayson's ear and read my ridiculous story aloud, stumbling over words but not stopping. His face flushed. His entire body seemed to tense. Probably just a medical response, I told myself. Definitely not him hearing this. But I kept going anyway. The comments had gone silent, possibly traumatized. I need therapy after this. The CEO is being tortured by bad fanfiction. This is cruel and unusual punishment. Cruel and unusual was a bit strong. I preferred therapeutic creative writing. Every day after the doctor's rounds and the orderly's professional care, the luxury suite would empty out. Marcus had insisted on privacy for his boss, no cameras, limited visitors. Perfect. Just me and my captive audience. My stutter was actually improving. Something about the lack of judgment, the freedom to fail without consequence, was rewiring my brain. I started speaking more confidently, longer sentences, fewer hesitations. And whenever I watched Grayson's monitors spike, his heart rate increasing, his brain activity flickering, I felt a strange satisfaction. Hear that? I thought. That's me, Lucy Fairwood, the one you said couldn't string two words together. I'm finding my voice, and you can't stop me. Chapter 6. 2 weeks into my hospital vigil, I realized I was getting too comfortable. Revenge was sweet, but if Grayson woke up remembering any of this, I was dead. I called Bradley and requested emergency leave. Someone else could take over. Already? He sounded disappointed, probably hoping I'd have a breakdown he could mock. Fine, find your own replacement. The obvious choice was Natalia, the office beauty, always finding excuses to visit the executive floor. Her ambitions were transparent, but at least she wasn't trying to kiss unconscious patients. I painted her a rosy picture. See these brainwave readings? Look at this spike here and this one. The doctors say Mr. Hale is basically about to wake up. Her eyes widened. Think about it, he opens his eyes and you're the first thing he sees, the grateful patient and his devoted caretaker. This is your chance to make an impression. She grabbed my hands. Lucy, you're my guardian angel. If this works out, I owe you everything. I patted her hand. Good luck, I thought, you'll need it. Natalia left to pack. She'd return in the morning for the handover. That night, I sat in the quiet hospital room, sipping hot chocolate a night nurse had brought me. My last evening of guard duty. Outside the window, city lights glittered. Inside, monitors beeped steadily. I looked at Grayson's face, peaceful in sleep in a way it never was when he was awake and terrorizing everyone around him. You know, I said quietly, not stuttering at all, I almost feel sorry for you. No response, obviously. All that money, all that power, and everyone's either afraid of you or trying to use you. I set down my cup. Must be lonely. The monitors beeped. But that doesn't excuse how you treated people. Treated me. I stood, gathering my things. I hope you wake up, and I hope you figure out how to be less of a monster, but I'm not going to stick around to find out. I was halfway to the door when I heard it. A rustling, a sharp intake of breath. Then a voice rough from weeks of disuse but unmistakably cold. Who said you could leave? My blood turned to ice. The comments exploded. He's awake. Run, run now. She's trapped. I turned slowly. Grayson Hale was sitting up in bed, monitors going haywire, green eyes fixed on me like a predator who'd finally cornered his prey. You, he said, each word dripping with menace, you fed me spinach. Chapter 7. I couldn't move. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs had turned to concrete. Grayson swung his legs over the side of the bed, yanking out his IV with a wince. Alarms started blaring. Don't even think about calling for help. His voice was hoarse but commanding. We're going to have a conversation. I should go get the doctors. Sit down. I sat. He rose to his feet, swaying slightly. Weeks of unconsciousness had weakened him. But even diminished, Grayson Hale was terrifying. He crossed the room slowly, using furniture for support, until he stood directly in front of my chair. Then he leaned down, hands gripping the armrests, caging me in. I heard everything, he said softly. Every word. Every ridiculous story about Marcus and socks, every speech about liberty and equality, every sip of that disgusting green sludge you pumped into me. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. I also heard what you said about the blonde nurse, about protecting her from me. I closed my eyes, waiting for the explosion. Look at me. I forced my eyes open. His expression was strange, not angry exactly, something more complicated. You think I'm a monster? It wasn't a question. Yes, I whispered, no point lying now. You're right. I blinked. I am a monster. He pushed off from the chair, turning away from me. I learned early that if you hurt people first, they can't hurt you. If you're cruel enough, they keep their distance. If everyone's afraid of you, no one can disappoint you. He was silent for a moment. My parents had what you might call an efficient relationship, business arrangement. They tolerated each other publicly and ignored each other privately. They ignored me too, mostly. Nannies came and went. I learned not to get attached. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. His voice sharpened. I'm telling you because you're the first person who's treated me like a human being in years. A terrible human being, but still human. He turned back to face me. Everyone else either wants something from me or is too scared to look me in the eye. You fed me spinach juice as revenge. You read me the Gettysburg Address in the middle of the night. You wrote bizarre stories to make yourself laugh. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. And you talked to me like I was a regular person who needed to get his act together. Not a god, not a demon, just a man who'd made bad choices. I didn't know what to say. The things you said before you thought I was waking up about hoping I'd figure out how to be less of a monster. He sat heavily on the edge of the bed. No one's ever said that to me. Everyone either enables my worst impulses or runs away. You just stated facts and walked out. I wasn't trying to formality bury. Wasn't trying to fix me. I know, that's why it mattered. He met my eyes directly. I'm not going to become a good person overnight. I've spent 30 years building walls. That doesn't disappear because I had a near-death experience and an employee read me speeches about human dignity. Then what? But I can try. The words seemed physically painful for him to say. I can start treating people like they have value beyond what they can do for me. I can stop weaponizing my tongue every time I feel threatened. I can learn to be less terrible. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on him before. Uncertainty. I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm not asking you to love me or forgive me or give me patience I don't deserve. I'm just asking. He stopped, frustrated. I don't even know what I'm asking. You're asking for a chance, I said quietly, to prove you can change. Yes, the word was barely audible. I considered this man cruel, damaged, powerful, lost. The monster who'd tormented me. The patient who'd listened to me find my voice without judgment. The son whose parents had never taught him how to be loved. I'm not going to be your therapist, I said finally, or your rehabilitation project. If you want to change, you have to do the work yourself. Real work. With professionals. Not with some employee you've bullied for 18 months. I know. And I'm not going to pretend you didn't hurt me. You did. Words matter. The way you treated me treated everyone that caused real damage. I know. But, I took a breath. I believe people can change, if they really want to, if they put in the effort. So if you're serious about this, about becoming less of a monster, then I hope you succeed. I stood up. Not for your sake, for everyone else's. You have a lot of power, Grayson. You could use it to lift people up instead of tearing them down. That's a choice you make every single day. I headed for the door. Goodbye, Mr. Hale. I hope the next time we meet, you're someone worth meeting. This time he didn't stop me. Chapter 8. I ran. Caught the first train home to my mother's house, 1,000 miles away. I told myself I was leaving because I needed distance from the situation, from the complicated mess of emotions that came with watching your bully become human. But really, I was running from myself. From the part of me that had felt something shift when Grayson looked at me with uncertainty instead of contempt. From the dangerous hope that maybe people could change, that maybe I could change. My mother greeted me at the door with her usual warmth. Oh, so the prodigal daughter crawls back when she can't make it in the big city? She launched into her familiar lecture, should have stayed local, should have listened to her. Women end up married and pregnant anyway, wasted years in some career that went nowhere. I let the words wash over me, nodding automatically. But when she noticed my stutter had improved, her mood shifted. Before, with that problem of yours, no one would want you. But now, you've got a decent job. We need to get you married before I die of embarrassment. She shoved her phone at me. This one's good civil servant, stable income. This one's a doctor useful when you're sick. This one owns property. Mom. Don't interrupt me. You're 25, practically ancient by. Mom, my voice was steady, clear. I'm not going to marry someone off a list because you're embarrassed I'm single. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. What did you just say? I said no. I met her eyes directly. I get to choose who I marry. I get to choose if I marry. That's my decision, not yours. How dare you? I dare because I'm an adult. My heart was pounding, but the words kept coming. You raised me alone after Dad died. You worked hard. You sacrificed. I know that, and I'm grateful. but gratitude doesn't mean I have to hand over control of my entire life. My mother's face went red. You ungrateful. I'm not ungrateful, I'm boundary setting. I stood my ground. I love you, Mom, but I'm not going to let you treat me like I'm too stupid to make my own choices. I'm not going to let you hit me when I disagree with you. I'm not going to let you scream at me until I give in just to make it stop. Hit you? When did I ever? Last Christmas. When I said I wanted to spend the holiday with friends, you slapped me and called me selfish. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I've spent my whole life trying to be small enough to fit into the box you made for me, I continued. Small dreams, small voice, small life, but I'm done with that. I'm going to take up space. I'm going to speak, even when my words come out wrong. I'm going to make my own choices, even if you disagree with them. I picked up my bag. I'm going to visit Grandma. When you're ready to have a real conversation, one where you actually listen instead of lecture, you know how to reach me. I walked out. My hands were shaking. My legs felt like jelly. But I hadn't stuttered once. Chapter 9. I spent a week at my grandmother's house, a tiny cottage at the edge of town, surrounded by her beloved garden. Grandma Chen didn't lecture, she didn't judge. She made tea and listened while I talked. About the job, about Grayson, about Mom, about the strange floating comments I'd been seeing, which had finally faded after I left the hospital. Those comments, Grandma said thoughtfully. They wanted you to play a certain role, the supportive girlfriend, the patient healer, the one who fixes the broken man through endless love. Yes. And what did you want? I considered the question. I wanted to be seen, not as a supporting character in someone else's story, not as a stutter or a victim or a project, just as me. Grandma nodded. Your grandfather had a temper, you know. When we were young, he'd get angry and say terrible things. I stayed with him for years thinking I could love him into changing. Did it work? No, she smiled sadly. He changed eventually, but not because of me. Because he wanted to be a better father to your mother. Because he looked in the mirror and didn't like what he saw. Because he chose to do the work. She patted my hand. You can't love someone into being a good person, Lucy. They have to choose it themselves. All you can do is decide what you're willing to accept and walk away when someone doesn't meet that standard. What if they change after you walk away? Then you have a new decision to make. Her eyes twinkled. But you make it from a position of strength, not desperation. I thought about that for a long time. The morning before I was scheduled to return to the city, I went to the park I'd played in as a child. The old slide was still there, weathered and worn. I touched a dent in the metal. No one else would know what had caused it. But I remembered. When I was 7, kids at school called me the stammerer. The angrier I got, the worse it became. I couldn't form a single sentence. My tongue felt like it was wrapped in barbed wire, every word a struggle. All I could do was cry. Not because of the bullies, but because they were right. There was something wrong with me, something broken, something that made me different from everyone else. Then a boy ran over and stood in front of me. He was about my age, with dark hair and fierce eyes too intense for a child's face. His clothes were expensive, I noticed, even through my tears. Some kind of private school uniform. Leave her alone, he shouted through a gap-toothed smile. You're all being jerks. He raised his little fists. I ate my spinach today. I'm strong like Popeye. Come at me. They beat him up, badly. He crashed into the slide and split his head open, blood everywhere, soaking into his fancy uniform. A man in a suit rushed over, some kind of driver or bodyguard, and scooped the boy up. As he was carried away, the boy pointed at me with his uninjured hand. Tell me your name. If you don't, I'll never talk to you again. I tried so hard. I'm LLLL. All those eyes watching, judging, laughing. Nothing came out. The man glanced at me, pity in his gaze, and walked away with the bleeding boy. But it wasn't the bullies who hurt me most that day. It was that look of pity, somehow worse than mockery. And my own voice failing me when it mattered most. I sat by the slide until the sun began to set, lost in memories. Why couldn't I just speak? I'd asked myself that question for 20 years. But now I knew the answer. I couldn't speak because I'd believed my voice didn't matter. Because every time I'd tried to express myself, someone had shut me down, talked over me, dismissed me. Because I'd learned that silence was safer than the pain of being ignored. But silence wasn't safety. Silence was surrender. And I was done surrendering. I stood up, dusting off my jeans. Tomorrow I'd go back to the city, face whatever consequences awaited me at work, figure out what came next. But for now, I whispered something to the empty playground. My name is Lucy Fairwood, and I have something to say. The words came out clear and strong. Nobody heard them but me. That was enough. Chapter 10. I returned to the city expecting to be fired. Instead, I found my desk covered in flowers. What the hell? I muttered, staring at the elaborate arrangements. Bradley appeared at my shoulder, practically vibrating with curiosity. Someone's got an admirer? Anonymous delivery, very expensive. I spotted a card tucked among the roses and plucked it out. I'm in therapy, real therapy, with a professional 3 times a week. I'm not expecting anything from you, I just wanted you to know that I'm trying. G.H. P.S. I've banned spinach from the executive floor, for everyone's safety. I stared at the card for a long moment. Then I laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all, the flowers, the therapy update, the spinach prohibition, it was too much. Bradley was watching me like I'd lost my mind. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I tucked the card into my pocket. Better than fine, actually. I sat down at my desk and got to work. Over the following weeks, I noticed changes. Not dramatic transformations. Grayson Hale didn't suddenly become a saint. He still had a sharp tongue. He still expected excellence. He still made employees nervous. But the cruelty had softened. He criticized work without attacking the person. He gave feedback that was harsh but constructive. He stopped making people cry for sport. More than that, he started listening. Really listening. Asking questions and waiting for answers. Acknowledging when someone had a good idea. It was like watching a porcupine slowly lower its quills. The comments I'd grown accustomed to had faded since leaving the hospital, but occasionally, when something significant happened, I'd catch fragments. Character development. He's actually doing the work. This is what real growth looks like, slow and imperfect. I didn't disagree. 3 months after Grayson's accident, I was presenting to the full executive team. My first major presentation since taking on client-facing responsibilities. The room was packed. My heart was racing. But I thought about all those nights in the hospital, reading speeches to an unconscious audience. All those stumbling practice sessions. All the words I'd finally learned to trust. I opened my mouth. Good morning, I'm Lucy Fairwood and I'm here to present our Q3 client acquisition strategy. The words came out clear, strong, confident. Not perfect. I stumbled over a few statistics, had to pause and collect myself once or twice. But I kept going. I didn't apologize. I didn't make myself small. When I finished, the room applauded. Grayson was watching from the back of the room. He didn't applaud, that would have been too obvious, but he inclined his head slightly. Not bad. I smiled. Not bad yourself. Chapter 11. The real conversation happened 6 months later. I was working late, alone in the office when Grayson appeared. You're still here. I didn't look up from my computer. So are you. He pulled up a chair and sat across from me. Not looming, not intimidating, just sitting. I owe you an apology. That made me look up. The way I treated you before the accident, the things I said about your stutter, the humiliation, all of it, there's no excuse. I was cruel because I could be, because hurting people made me feel powerful. That was wrong. He met my eyes directly. I'm sorry, genuinely, not because I want something from you, but because you deserved better. Everyone I treated that way deserved better. I considered his words, the sincerity in his voice, the visible effort it was taking him to be vulnerable. Thank you, I said finally. That means something. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know that has to be earned, not demanded. I just needed you to know that I see what I did, and I'm working on being different. We sat in silence for a moment. The boy at the playground, I said quietly, the one who got his head split open defending a little girl with a stutter, that was you, wasn't it? His expression flickered with surprise. You remember that? I never forgot. I couldn't say my name that day. I've spent 20 years wishing I could have thanked you. You just did. No, I shook my head. I mean, really, thank you. You stood up for a stranger when everyone else was laughing. That took courage. I was 7, I didn't know any better. Maybe that's the point. Maybe at 7 you knew exactly how to be brave and kind. You just forgot somewhere along the way. He was quiet for a long time. I'm trying to remember, he finally said. I know. I reached across the desk and squeezed his hand briefly. I see you trying, and for what it's worth, I think 7-year-old you would be proud. His eyes glistened. He looked away quickly. Thank you, Lucy. You're welcome, Grayson. Chapter 12. We didn't fall in love that night. Real connection doesn't work like that, not after everything we'd been through. There was too much history, too many complicated emotions, too much growth still needed. But something shifted. We started talking, really talking. Not as boss and employee, not as antagonists, but as two people who'd seen each other at their worst and somehow found respect. We talked about childhood, about parents who didn't know how to love, about building walls to survive and then forgetting how to take them down. We talked about change, about how hard it was, how slow, how often you failed and had to start over. We talked about voice, about what it meant to finally be heard and what it cost to stay silent. A year after the accident, Grayson asked me to dinner. Not as your boss, he clarified quickly. Not as an order or expectation, just as someone who'd like to spend time with you. You can say no. Actually, you probably should say no. I'm still a work in progress. We all are, I said. And I said yes. Epilogue. We got married 3 years later. Not because I'd healed him with patient devotion, I hadn't. He'd healed himself, through years of therapy and conscious effort and the daily choice to be better. Not because he'd given me my voice, he hadn't. I'd claimed that myself, word by stumbling word, until the stutter was just a footnote rather than my whole story. We got married because we'd both done the work, because we'd learned to communicate, really communicate, with honesty and vulnerability and respect. Because we knew each other's darkness and chose to walk toward the light together anyway. Our wedding was small, just family and close friends in a garden full of flowers. I didn't stutter during my vows, not once. But if I had, it wouldn't have mattered. Grayson would have waited. He'd learned how to be patient with me, with himself, with the long, slow work of becoming human. At the reception, my mother pulled me aside. I was wrong, she said. The words seemed to cost her something. About a lot of things. About you needing to be married to have value. About your choices being foolish. About thinking I knew better. I hugged her. Thank you, Mom. He seems like a good man. She glanced at Grayson, who was awkwardly trying to make small talk with my grandmother. Better than those civil servants I picked out. I laughed. Much better. The floating comments, which had been silent for years, flickered one last time as we drove away from the reception. This is what healthy love looks like. Two whole people choosing each other, not broken pieces looking to be completed. They did the work, they earned this. Happy endings aren't given, they're built. I smiled and let the words fade. The comments had wanted a fairy tale, a sleeping prince awakened by a patient princess's kiss. What we'd built was better. It was real. Two imperfect people who'd learned to speak their truth, to set boundaries, to demand respect while offering compassion. Two hearts that had been lost and found themselves. Together. The sun set in brilliant orange and pink as we drove toward our future. And somewhere, a little girl who couldn't speak her own name finally understood. Her voice had been there all along. She'd just needed to believe it was worth hearing. The end.